Good morning and welcome to Fact Found. It is the 21st of July 2026 and the topic, Africans Against Africans. This is a production of Abiola Abiraba. At the just concluded 69th ordinary session of the ECOWAS Authority of Heads of State and Government held in Lungi, Sierra Leone, the Nigerian government, through Vice President Kashim Shettima, seized the opportunity of having high-level diplomats and heads of government present to condemn in strong terms the Afrophobic attacks in South Africa. He reminded the summit that South Africa's current freedom was funded by liberation efforts from nations like Nigeria. The Nigerian government at the summit formally charged ECOWAS to escalate the issue to the upcoming assembly of the African Union to address the violence and ensure the safety of Africans in South Africa. The Vice President confirmed that over 1,500 Nigerians have been evacuated from South Africa due to the attacks. They left behind businesses they had labored for. In fact, some were killed. But why Africans against Africans? Let's share your thoughts on how we relate with each other on the continent. Blacks against blacks. Call the number 091-2423-0865 to be a part of the conversation this morning. Once again, welcome to Fact File.
They said I should from the online department.
From
the online department.
So you are using what platform?
I'm not sure.
Eh?
I don't know yet.
You don't know yet?
They just say I should record.
Okay, you are just recording video.
Yes.
Now, the recent attacks on foreign nationals in South Africa have once again raised, questions about the state of unity on the African continent. At a time when Africa as a continent continues to look at issues around regional integration, free movement, free trade, economic cooperation, incidents of violence against fellow Africans now seem to be contradicting all of these conversations about unity on the continent. Beyond the immediate humanitarian concerns, of course, a lot of nationals from other countries have had to leave South Africa. As documented earlier, more than 1,000 Nigerians have been evacuated back home. One is left wondering, some of the major issues to consider here. What fuels these recurring attacks? Is it economic hardship? Is it unemployment? Misinformation, weak immigration enforcement, or deep-seated prejudice? Of course, we know that the one that's always easy about it is, these foreign nationals are taking our jobs. That's what we hear consistently. But beyond just that narrative of they're taking our jobs, can we possibly trace this to other deep-seated issues? And how can governments in Africa, regional bodies, and citizens work together to ensure that these disagreements over migrations or employment never descend into violence, as we have seen over the last few months in South Africa? As the African Union and the regional organizations consider the way forward, this is also an opportunity for us to collectively reflect on what it truly means to embrace the spirit of African solidarity. Now, what do you bring to the table as far as that conversation is concerned? You can call 091-2423-0865, 091-2423-0865. In the course of the discussion this morning, we are scheduled to have with us a professor of history and international studies, Professor Eddie Eragbe. But first, let's open the phone lines and have a chat with you. Hello, good morning. Hello, good morning. Femi from WhatsApp, please go ahead.
Okay. I think this Somalia attack has been targeted over people. It has been a response visit. So it has happened like 3 times of my own meeting today. It's happening against Africans and Nigerians in South Africa. When I did my own investigation, because I have a brother over there, when I did my investigation, I found out that it was the hardworking, because the non-Indians are hardworking than the South African. So there is a common thing that when you work hard, you'll be successful. So due to the hard working, as Nigerians are hard working over there, and other African countries, they are hard working over there, then because they achieve a lot of success. So this not provoke them to their laziness, that most of them, their laziness that they could not make it. It becomes jealousy. They become jealous. They become envious of the success being achieved by the foreigners. People, they are quite that most of them are living
Okay, I'm sorry, we're going to have to discontinue that call there, but I did hear, I mean, you've made what we can really consider to be a fair point in all of this. The fact that the jealousy seems to be stemming from, you did say that some of the foreign nationals are really, really hardworking in those countries, and that's what eventually translates into success, which then, seems to be the root of the problem with the locals. Hello, good morning. Okay, we lost that line. 0912-423-0865 is the number to call. Once again, 0912-423-0865. We're looking at Africans against Africans, following the xenophobic attacks that have been going on in South Africa, and what the regional government and the continental government can be doing or should be doing about it to ensure that we have full integration within the African space. I mean, how much development can we possibly have on a continent when we continue to deal with all of these strife and all that, coming from various quarters? At the end of the day, it becomes very, very important that we're dealing with the root causes of these issues. And it's definitely far-reaching. It should, obviously, the conversation should go beyond just singling out maybe unemployment, for instance, or singling out migration issues. It's definitely far deeper than that. But for you, what do you prioritize as far as the issues that are at stake or at play here? Hello, good morning. Good morning, what's your name and where are you calling from? Brownson from Iowa, you're welcome.
Thank you very much. Let me discuss that if that's done, if the leader have a good leader, and we are working with, and leader will not go anywhere to struggle, to work hard. We should have worked hard in a good idea. So that we are all citizens. We are all corrupt. The problem is that if it time to work well, we don't have any problem in Africa.
Okay, unfortunately, that was not a very good line. Not really sure what's going on with phone lines, but please, keep trying. 0912-423-0865 is the number to call to join the discussion this morning.
Hold on.
All right, we have joining us now Professor Eddie Erabe, who's a professor of history and international studies. Good morning, Prof. Thank you so much for joining us on Fact File.
Good morning. How are you today?
Very well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Africa as a continent has dealt with so many issues over the years. Of course, the issues of colonization and all that. But right now, we don't have the whites against us. I mean, as we speak, it's Africans against Africans. What is the problem? What is wrong with the black race?
Well, good morning, everyone. The fact is that as a professor of history and specializing in black diaspora studies, which has to do with Africans that are outside of the continent and African unity, I would really say that what has been happening recently is a very sad commentary on the expectations of Africans who sacrifice so much and work so tirelessly to see how Africans can unite, especially in the face of exploitation, in the face of oppression that was on. And on the basis of the unity that Africans started trying to build, even while colonialism was still on, as early as 1900, Africans in diaspora were always meeting to see how they could unite to fight against white racism, oppression, and all. And of course, when Africa became independent, late Kwame Nkrumah, Prime Minister of Ghana, really had to facilitate the coming together of Africans that led to the establishment of the OAU in 1963. So as he rightly pointed out, it's a sad commentary on all the efforts that Pan-Africanists have made to see how Africans could unite together, irrespective of boundaries, to work for the liberation of the Africans, especially in the light of how Africans today are still largely the most least developed as far as the continents of the world are concerned. So what is happening now is a complete reversal of the expectations of the Pan-Africanists then, who were hoping, looking at the declaration that led to the establishment of the OAU, that is the preamble. They were saying that boundaries should not matter. They were saying that the resources of Africa should be harnessed, irrespective of where Africans were, for the upliftment of the continent. And of course, it was on the basis of that, that when the OAU was born, one of the two cardinal points that came up, both in its aims and objectives and later in its principles, had to do for them working together to bring about the total liberation of the continent and the standing out of them what we call white minority regime. And who were the greatest victims of this? It happened to have been our brothers and sisters in Southern Africa, which of course at that time, Angola, Libya, South Africa, Mozambique, Zimbabwe, they were all at that time under great white minority oppression. And the last bastion of this happened to be South Africa. And to tell you that the then Pan-Africanist leaders among the South Africans recognized this immediately. Nelson Mandela, then later for their president, all South Africa really gave his freedom after the end of the graduation. He went to the university, turned them in black. Families were then protesting and they were being arrested because of their support. He thanked Africans for their solidarity, and therefore it's an irony of history and development. Same people that were great beneficiaries, we know how Africans people their dogs. The neighboring states, the Africans, the South Africans did not need any party if they were then being pursued under the liberation movement. Nigerians were heavily involved in mobilizing, supporting in the United Nations, the sanctions and all that was taken. But today, as you have rightly pointed out, it's Africans against Africans.
Okay.
And this is very sad commentary. Why is it so? I believe is that when states or persons of an area are failing, they tend to look for scapegoats. They tend to look for those that are making it and start fighting them. Unfortunately, that is what I believe is now happening in South Africa. And it's a very sad commentary on the hopes and aspirations of the African Pan-Africanists of years gone by.
Okay, very well said, Prof. As an opening statement. But before we get into the nitty-gritty of what's going on, we're going to stay on this theme of unity on the continent. And I'm just going to throw in a couple of other issues because, today we're talking about South Africa, but we do know that in recent years, in the last 3, 4, 5 years, we've had issues in West Africa as well, where military governments overthrowing governments and pulling out of the regional bodies and all that. We have situations in the north of Africa as well, where maybe countries like Morocco, Algeria, they're seeing themselves, or there are narratives about seeing themselves as more Arabs than Africans, or not even Africans. And you know, these are recent developments, of course, and then we've had in the past the issues like back in Nigeria when we had the Ghana Must Go thing. How does this all play into that conversation around unity? Are we even getting any closer to unity on the continent beyond a reckoning?
Well, I think we are not. That's the bottom line. It's unfortunate. We are not getting closer. If you look closely, when ECOWAS was even established, there was to be the free movement of persons and free movement of goods, as it were. But then there have been great obstacles, and as you have mentioned, even our own dear country, Nigeria, when at the time the Ghanaians who were having challenges in their country decided to move into Nigeria
Okay, Prof, I like the fact that you mentioned this because that was where we were actually going to end the conversation this morning, looking at development and socio-economic life of the people, looking at good governance, questions around corruption and all that. We will, in the next few minutes, get to that. You kindly hold the line. Let's welcome the listener to join the conversation. It is Fact File on Radio Power FM. This morning we're discussing Africans against Africans. Who's here? Hello, good morning. Good morning.
I want to ask the prof this question. Is there no angle if so? And this is the way they used to make this program in what is going on with the Africans on African soil. You think the Western world will like Africa to be at peace? But you see what is happening in Asia continent now. The Western world found out that there's no way for them to penetrate the Asian world. They now coming back to the Africa they have left with the kind of what they've left down. Now they are not coming back. You think they don't have hand in all this that is happening to us? They would like Africa to be at peace because out of that most of the things that they are using to benefit their own land now, they are taking from the Africa. So the project is the hand of the Western world not part of what is happening to us in Africa.
Okay, very interesting question being raised there, Prof. And I'm going to, put the concern of the listener to you with, I think there's some, I'm just going to have to paraphrase. It's a popular saying about the fact that the unity of the oppressed is the greatest fear of the oppressors. And as such, the oppressors will never allow the unity of the oppressed. Now, Alaba is saying, could there possibly be, as is always said, as you use in local balance, the hands of the whites or the hands of some of these either the European or the powerhouses across all the other continents, then get hand for our matter for Africa.
My brother,
oh yeah, now more than good, no problem. Okay, Prof. While we're at that, I'll just put in the last question because we have just a little over a minute to wrap this up. How important is the conversation around good governance in Africa and all the countries across the continent?
I think it's at the heart of it all. And one unfortunate thing about South Africa today is failure of governance. Because the government of South Africa has remained, if we look at that, innovating in terms of its condemnation of this act of barbarism that has been established or used against fellow Africans. You go to people's places, you kill them, you seize their property. The government is saying they will not pay compensation. Governance is critical at the end of it all. Whether
what can the African Union do now that we are here?
Yeah, because you know how to take decisive action. And they have to take decisive action. And the one that decisive action are, of course, if South Africa as a government is refusing to take charge and protect the South Africans, it will suspend South Africa from the African Union. It should not be sanctions. You know, those are some of the things that are open when it comes to diplomatic relations. If South Africa is very isolated, just as we did to them during the period of apartheid, they might have everything. We cannot just allow things to go as if it's normal. And then the president of South Africa is making it look like we don't owe any Africans an apology for what is happening.
Professor Eddie Eragni, we must thank you very much for joining us on Fact File this morning. It's been such an enlightening session that we have had. Thank you so much for joining the discussion.
It's been my pleasure, and thank you, and I hope that the dreams of the Pan-Africanists will still be realized despite the challenges that we are facing at this moment. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Have a blessed day.
You too, thank you. It's definitely we're sharing those hopes, and that the African continent can truly come together and realize its potential. We have been looking at Africans against Africans on Fact File this morning, and we must sincerely thank you for being a part of the discussion. Femi, you joined us from the States, Brownton and Alaba, you joined us from Lagos. We must say big thank you to our guest, Professor of History and International Studies, Professor Eddie Eragbe. This has been a production of Abiola Aberaga with studio assistants from Sharon, Prophecy, Foluke, Miriam, Emmanuel, and Deborah. I am Oluwatosin Oshin. Thank you for listening and stay with your #1 independent radio, Great Power FM.